you ever realize that everything you see is a design, either nature's design or human's design? And did you ever wonder where the human designs originated? First, what do I mean by a design? A design is developed from a set of requirements. For example, if we want to build a house, then we need the requirements such as what size, how many rooms, what price range, etc. And then a design can be developed. It identifies how the requirements are going to be implemented. Unfortunately, many things are the way they are today because they were just perpetuated from the way they were designed in the past. Many things designed by humans come from hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, and some are still around today causing problems. You have to go back in time to see through a design and its implementation to understand why it's there, and we don't get to see the reasons why a design is there unless we do some kind of analysis. We can analyze why we have the designs in nature by using natural scientific methods. And we can analyze designs created by humans using various systems and product analysis methods. In this series of videos, I'd like you to come with me on an archaeological dig and analyze some of the designs that we take for granted in our lives. By the way, I'm Brian Dickinson of a training business called Logical Conclusions Incorporated. And I recently gave a keynote speech at a business conference in Honolulu, Hawaii, explaining some of the strange ways we have perpetuated the past into today's way of life. That speech formed the basis of this light, non-technical set of videos. I find myself constantly looking for the reasons why things are the way they are, probably because I've taught business analysis to organizations for so many years and it's warped my brain. Now I find myself doing what I call an analysis archaeological dig on just about everything I see. It's eye-opening just how many outdated human designs we take for granted. Many are just perpetuated for historical reasons. Sometimes they seem to be hysterical reasons, as you'll see. To show you what I mean, let's go on an archaeological dig to see how some old designs are still perpetuated today. By the way, the definition of archaeology is the systematic study of past human life and culture by the recovery and examination of remaining material. So let's see what we might uncover by looking at some remaining material. Now, if you detect an accent, I was born in England. Did you ever wonder why they drive on the left in England? If you visited England, you'll have noticed they drive on the wrong side of the road. Well, at least wrong from the point of view of drivers in the United States, where they drive on the right side. I took this picture when I was driving down a typical country lane in England. Actually, you'll notice I was sitting on the left side of the car because the steering wheel is on the right side, not on the left as it is in the United States. I think I was driving towards the A128 road. You'll notice they aren't very good at keeping secrets there also. Everyone even knows James Bond is a British secret agent and how he likes his favourite drink. Anyway, if you notice in the picture, it's quite typical for the trees to overhang into the road on country lanes. Now, in days of old, when knights were bold, they would ride down the country lanes, sometimes carrying a lance or their flag or standard, and I'm going to bet most of them were right-handed. Riding down the old lanes, they would carry their flags vertically. It would upset the horses in front if they didn't, especially during rush hour. Also, if there was a need to draw their swords, they wanted their sword arm closest to an opponent coming in the other direction. Now guess which side of the lane they would ride on so they would avoid catching the branches of the trees and be ready for a fight. I bet the left. When the first automobiles arrived, they used the same side of the road as the horses and carriages, and finally, when horses were replaced, the cars carried on driving on the left. You may have heard the old British colonial phrase, "The sun never sets on the British Empire." Well, if you go today to some of the once British colonies, you find some of them still drive on the left. For example, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Pakistan, India, and Hong Kong all drive on the left. Obviously, those countries originally imported British vehicles and so ended up driving on the left also. You could say, well, what about France? They had knights of old also, and they drive on the right. Well, maybe they just drove on the right to annoy the British. Or perhaps it had something to do with the French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte being left-handed. There was also a little disagreement between the USA and Britain some time back, and the USA went against the British system and rode on the right, with mass production and exports of left-hand drive vehicles, now most of the countries in the world drive on the right. Of course, which side one drives on is only a problem for those who travel internationally. For example, stepping off a curb or driving out of a driveway in London can be scary if you're used to looking the wrong way for oncoming traffic. I hope they have a system figured out for space traffic and everybody agrees to it. So, historical designs get perpetuated. There's a lesson here. Be careful what you perpetuate. If we continue on our archaeological dig on the subject of transportation, you'll also find an extensive railroad system in Europe. Even the little England town I was born in had 3 train stations, North, Central and South stations. I believe England has the oldest train system, and the trains were also built to ride on the left. And even today, many trains in the world have the driver operating on the right-hand side of the cabs. Unlike automobiles, to be able to operate a train system across many connected countries, you need to have a fixed track and therefore a standard train railroad gauge. That means the spacing between the rails. Now, if you measure the inner distance between the 2 rails of a train track, generally you'll discover it's 4 feet 8.5 inches, not 5 feet or 2 yards or any whole number. You may have heard what I'm about to say. It's been on the internet for a while now. The story seems to be mostly based in fact. The strange rail gauge of 4 feet 8.5 inches is used almost worldwide. It was used in England for the early coal mining tracks, and before that, the carriage makers of England used that specification for the spacing between the wheels of their carriages. Even earlier, wagon makers used that specification for the distance between their wagon wheels, because of the established ruts in the old roads formed even earlier from the wheels of the old Roman chariots. I visited the preserved town of Pompeii in Italy a few years back, and I took a photograph of the ruts in the road there. I had been talking about this strange railroad gauge specification in my seminars for years. You can see the ruts in the flagstone roads in this photograph. So in our archaeological dig, we find that the standard railroad gauge used in many parts of the world today was derived from the specification for Roman chariots. So if you wonder what horse's rear came up with such an odd specification, well, actually 2 of them. You see, the imperial Rome chariots were made to be wide enough to accommodate the back ends of 2 horses. Of course, not all countries have followed this same rail specification. I remember on one of my train travels, I had to get off one train, walk down the platform to board another train that had a different rail gauge. It was a chaotic scramble to get a good seat on the next train if you were at the back of the unloading train. Of course, this is only a problem for travellers between 2 countries that have different standards, but at least there is a general standard. So, historical designs will get perpetuated unless actively changed. Still, the lesson is, be careful what you perpetuate. Please follow me on to the next video in this series, part 2, to continue our archaeological dig. We'll see from where we derived our numerical and alphabetical systems, and how they have been perpetuated into the latest technology. Or you can find out more about what I teach professionally by going to my website at www.logicalconclusionsinc.com.